Jeff Lebby's heading to Starkville. What does that mean for the Oklahoma Sooners? We'll discuss on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your team, your first listen every day, your team every day. John is struggling out of the gate because I'm just so heartbroken over this Jeff Lebby news. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Go download the Game Time app in your app store, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. You can follow my buddy here, Josh Helmer, at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on the KREF Sports app. And Josh, Jeff Lebby heading to Starkville. It seemed like that was the direction that this was going. As early as middle of last week, we were starting to kind of hear some rumblings. And then over the weekend, as Oklahoma's season and Big 12 title hopes went by the wayside, it became even louder noise that Lebby would be heading to Starkville to take the Mississippi State head coaching job. And now it is official. He will be the head coach, and the Oklahoma Sooners are looking for an offensive coordinator. First, let's just start with Jeff Lebby. The Oklahoma Sooners lose a good offensive coordinator. As much as there was a lot of extracurricular or stuff off the field that kind of left you wanting a little bit more with Jeff Lebby, and there were some things on the field at times that left you wanted more. Overall, he was a really, really good offensive coordinator for the Oklahoma Sooners.
And you lose a little bit of continuity, of course, which is the nature of the beast in college football. If you're successful, somebody somewhere, you're losing some kind of continuity. Not every offseason, but at some point, right? So, but that is a factor in play here for Oklahoma. You would have liked, in maybe a perfect world, to keep that. As much consternation as at times, yes, we've had about different components of the Jeff Lebby offensive orchestration. And having said that, you look up and you see that Jeff Lebby's been a coordinator of an offense that scored 50 plus on 14 different occasions since 2019. That's tops among all active offensive coordinators. So yes, largely a very successful offensive coordinator. And but hey, Oklahoma is an attractive location for any offensive coordinator, with Jackson Arnold, who of course we'll get to momentarily, and the other pieces that will be in place at Oklahoma and just typically are in place at Oklahoma. This is not panic city for OU. It's what we expected with Jeff Lebby. It made sense why Mississippi State, why Zach Selman would make this move, given the familiarity between those two. And as I told you, end of last week, John, that it makes sense for Mississippi State that probably they need an offensive-minded head coach. Obviously, that was what had been successful with Mike Leach and in Mississippi State. So it makes sense that they would go in that direction, John.
Yeah, and even before Mike Leach, when you had Dan Mullen leading the way for them and Dak Prescott was having some success, it was an offensive system that was giving teams fits. And so you go back to Jeff Lebby, or you go to Jeff Lebby, back to an offensive style. And even when Zach Arnett was fired, most of the way through the season, it seemed like Jeff Lebby was going to be on their radar. And here we are. He's now the head coach over there for Oklahoma. Okay, you're a very attractive destination for offensive play callers. I mean, you have one of the best young quarterbacks in the nation in Jackson Arnold. You've got a great group of skill players in Nick Anderson and Jaden Gibson and Angelo Anthony that you're going to be able to work with, an offensive line that is showing that it can be really, really good. You've got some really nice young pieces there. Where do they go from here? Because the big name, or the hot name that everybody's talking about, is Seth Littrell, and it makes a lot of sense. He's been an offensive analyst for the Sooners this past year and has got a lot of experience coaching offense and being a offensive coordinator as well. So what are your thoughts on the idea that maybe Seth Littrell is kind of the front runner for the job, or are there any other names you'd like to see them pursue in this offensive coordinator pursuit?
You know what? I'm good with it so long as it's not just, hey, hand the job to Seth Littrell. That's kind of always been the plan. If you go through a thorough search and you vet some candidates and you still arrive at the idea that Seth Littrell is the best candidate for the gig, and obviously he's more than qualified for it, then hey, I'm good with it. But I'd like to explore and Andy Kotelnicki from Kansas. If you can do that at KU, then I'd like to have a conversation about what maybe it would look like at Oklahoma. But obviously, Littrell would be a very nice hire. And it does kind of feel like, John, maybe this was sort of always the succession plan at Oklahoma, because when you hired Jeff Lebby, it was sort of understood, okay, this is the name on staff, the most likely next head coaching candidate. We said it a couple of years ago when he first came to Norman. It's come to fruition now. And so you needed a backup plan, right? You needed a plan B as soon as that moment arrived. And maybe Littrell has kind of always been that name for Oklahoma.
Yeah, and it's a name that, some Sooner fans aren't so sure of because, okay, yeah, he's an Oklahoma guy, but really, where has he had a lot of success? Well, our guy TJ Eckert, he works for in Tulsa for one of the he's the sports director for KTUL News in Tulsa. He shared a great bit of information out on Twitter where every year from year 1 to year 2 his offenses saw big bumps in production. So I think it's a solid move. I think maybe it's not a home run hire. It's not one that's going to be super splashy, but I think it's one that I think it allows for the most continuity that you could have, in that you're going from a guy that, has some air raid principles in his background to a guy that's definitely out of that air raid coaching tree and someone who's familiar with the skill and the talent that you have available to you, and someone that Brent Venables is well aware of, has a relationship with, trusts, and I think that's a key component of all this is the relationship aspect. Brent Venables wants to have relationships with his coaching staff. You don't see many guys on this staff that either weren't at Oklahoma or he didn't have a relationship with prior to coming back to Oklahoma. Really, I think the only one that you can think of is maybe Brandon Hall, Emmett Jones. That's about all I can think of. Everybody else he had prior relationships with, and maybe Jay Valai. He hadn't really worked with Jay Valai, but they'd cross paths. But Seth Littrell goes way, way back in Oklahoma lore, was a fan favorite back in the day. But I think somebody that could add a little bit more toughness to the offense. At times that was a little bit of a knock towards Jeff Lebby, as it was a little too cute, to trying to trick you, trying to needle you, not really attacking downhill. And I think Lebby learned from some of his mistakes, but someone that maybe can come in and match the same intensity and tenacity that Brent Venables has for the defensive side of the ball. If you can add that characteristic to the offense, I think that would be beneficial, especially heading into the SEC.
Yeah, just know that you can go out physical a team, lean on the run game at times. And oh, by the way, you don't have to cute yourself to death. You can line up and pass protect and let Jackson Arnold survey a football field, get good pass protection, and then dissect it. And really for Oklahoma, that's when this offense this past season with Dylan Gabriel and company was at its best. And Littrell would have been a part of all of that, right? I mean, not that he's on field a part of all of those conversations this season for OU, but he's a part of the buildup to a lot of this for Oklahoma, and he watched it, right, and has a ton of experience. So it's exciting. There's the uncertainty angle of it, but let's call it what it is, John. I think there's some Oklahoma fans tonight that are sort of doing backflips, whether they should be or shouldn't be. There's some Oklahoma fans that aren't that upset that Jeff Lebby's leaving and going to Mississippi State. And it is kind of exciting about what is this going to mean for Oklahoma, who will be the next guy to lead this offense. And there's a lot of pieces in place, which let's talk about next, right? Sounds like one of them is going to be sticking around. And that was the big question. If and when this move might happen with Jeff Lebby, is Jackson Arnold going to stay? And it sounds like we've gotten good news on that front.
We'll talk about Jackson Arnold and the 2024 recruiting class and beyond here after the break. Hey, if you're looking for something to do this weekend, Game Time's got you covered. Best tickets, last minute prices available to you. If you want to go to the Big 12 championship game, I know Oklahoma's not playing in it, sadly, but if you want to go and just wear your Oklahoma gear and just really berate Texas and berate Oklahoma State and just not root for anybody, but have fun getting after everybody, go to Game Time, check out the best prices on last minute deals that you can find anywhere. They got great seats still available and great options. You can go see Pete Davidson on December 3rd at the Riverwind Casino. Pete Davidson, pretty funny comedian. If you like stand-up, you might have a good time. Go watch Pete. Go to Game Time. Download the app in your app store or Google Play Store. Use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase over at Game Time. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. As we enter kind of the first stage of the offseason, the transfer portal season is starting to heat up. We already got a couple names in, and Marcus Hicks, DJ Graham. Early signing period is just around the corner. The Oklahoma Sooners will be beneficiaries of the transfer portal. We'll have it covered all offseason long here on Locked On Sooners, your team every day. Let's talk Jackson Arnold, because the OU Daily, man, credit to the OU Daily for coming out with that pretty quickly. They reached out to Jackson Arnold's dad, Todd, who, obviously that's the big question with the Jeff Lebby move. What's going to happen with Jackson? And Todd reassured everybody that Jackson Arnold is committed to Oklahoma. And there's a lot of really good reasons for why he should stay at Oklahoma, but it's great news for the Sooners. One, it makes the job much more attractive that you know who the quarterback's going to be going into 2024. Two, you know who your quarterback's going to be going into 2024. And three, that guy is Jackson Arnold, because the dude's the truth. He's going to be really, really good.
You've built the foundation of your future around the idea that Jackson Arnold is here and he's the 5-star quarterback taking over this thing next season. The ability to run and throw the football, I think we saw nice glimpses of both this season, obviously in mostly limited duty, but the way that he handled in particular the tough situation at BYU in the second half and making enough plays, not a lot of bit of plays, but just enough plays to put Oklahoma over the top. And as I said on a number of different occasions with you, John, he really, to me, essentially kind of led 3 big time drives out of 5 in that game. The first one, obviously you missed a kick that you needed to make. The second one on short field, you got a touchdown. And the third one, you iced the game and ran the clock out and had a big time throw in it. So this needed to happen for Oklahoma, for OU fans. It wasn't, look, could Oklahoma find a quarterback out of the transfer portal? Do they have other talented quarterbacks that are on the way to Norman? Yes, they do. But you'd like to keep the guy that you have, the 5-star that signed with you, the Elite 11 MVP. Yeah, that's an important guy to keep for Oklahoma. So this is very, very reassuring for Sooner fans, no doubt.
Well, when you are losing a little bit of continuity and your offensive coordinator leaving for Mississippi State and your starting quarterback presumably leaving for the NFL, you need some continuity. And Jackson Arnold provides that. I'm sure he worked a lot last offseason with Nick Anderson, Jaden Gibson, Andrew Anthony. He's going to work more this offseason to get them ready as an offense to get ready for the SEC. But having the guy that is, to me, arguably one of the best, redshirt or true freshman quarterbacks in the country, that's huge, man. And you've got him. Like you said, you would have been able to get a quarterback in the portal, but we see how that goes sometimes. It worked out great for Dylan Gabriel in Oklahoma. It's worked out great in the past with, Baker and Kyler and Jalen, but it doesn't always work out great. Like, it didn't work out great for Spencer Rattler going to South Carolina. It didn't work out necessarily great for guys like Keaton Slovis, or, you can name a number of guys, JT Daniels. Like, that dude's transferred everywhere and it's not worked out for him. Highly talented kid, but you don't have to worry about that. You can just go worry about filling the holes that you might have, whether it's at offensive tackle because you're losing Walter Rouse and Tyler Guyton. You're not going to have to go out spending time finding your quarterback. It goes back to the same discussion we had when Jackson Arnold committed back in the January of 2022. It's like you got that quarterback figured out. and you can spend your time and your energy elsewhere. Same thing here. It's awesome. It's great news for the Oklahoma Sooners. Now you kind of do worry a little bit about, okay, is Davis Bevel going to be your backup quarterback? I think it's okay. It's a solid spot, and we'll dig into our kind of positional review, positional previews down the road. Let's talk about the 2024 recruiting class, because we've seen guys like David Stone, Zion Kearney, and David Mitchell come out and basically say, we're still committed. Nothing's changing for us on this front. And those are three of your most highly rated prospects in the 2024 cycle doing that. And talk about Jackson Arnold staying, being a great sign. These three guys sticking around is also a great sign. I don't think you had to worry about David Stone because nothing's changing on the defensive side, but I could understand if there was a little bit of trepidation for guys like Kearney and Mitchell if they wanted to reevaluate things, but they're like, nah, we're good. We don't need to reevaluate anything. And I think in large part that's due to the idea that Jackson Arnold's still going to be here, not just for 2024, but likely for 2025 and maybe even for 2026.
Probably so. I would say, yeah, it helps to know that I've got a 5-star quarterback in place that the head coach tells me, yes, you should feel very, very positive about. And look, Oklahoma is going to make a big-time OC hire, whether that's just promote Littrell, if that's out and about and you find a hot OC candidate, Oklahoma is going to either promote or hire somebody that is going to have these recruits and Jackson Arnold and everybody excited about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, you mix in, of course, Jackson Arnold, knowing that you got that there and just what Oklahoma's been doing. The fact that they won 10 games. No, they're not playing for the Big 12 championship game, John, but Oklahoma did what Oklahoma promised it would do. I was listening to Ted Roof the other day, which, look, maybe not the guy that everybody's super fired up about after the regular season finale, but he said something that struck a chord with me, which was, we told recruits a number of different things, right? And we held up our end of the bargain. And Oklahoma did that this season. They look, was it perfect? Was it what we would define as great for Oklahoma? No. Was there a little meat left on the bone? Of course there was. Oklahoma's not winning a national championship and they're not winning a conference championship. And that's not good enough at Oklahoma. And yet this was a big leap forward from 6-7 a year ago to 10-2. So all of those things together, and Jackson Arnold, yes, if you're an offensive player, there's no reason to jump ship and think about something else. There's exciting things being built with Brent Venables in Oklahoma right now. And oh, by the way, whatever the next step is for OU at OC, that's going to be exciting too.
Yeah, and speaking of that OC, George Stoya, and I think several other people put it out there, George Stoya, Sooner Scoop, that every Oklahoma Sooners offensive coordinator since 1998 has gone on to be a head coach somewhere. And that's a great track record. And somebody else pointed out how many coaches under Lincoln Riley ended up becoming head coaches somewhere. The only one I can think of is Jay Norvell, maybe, but I can't remember if he was here with Riley or not. That might be before Riley's time. But still, yeah, that's a tremendous track record for Oklahoma and offensive coordinators. Not as much success at defensive coordinator, but we're there now with Brent Venables ultimately getting back to Oklahoma. We'll have a few more thoughts from the weekend. We'll talk about the unfortunate end to the Oklahoma Sooners season and how that all played out, and then just kind of tie up a little bit of lingering notes from the regular season before we get ready for bowl season, transfer portal season, recruiting season, offensive coordinator season. We'll do all that after the break.
This episode brought to us by FanDuel Sportsbook. As the weather gets cooler, the NFL offers, they stay red hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. Just choose a team, moneyline, you win. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time than right now to get in on the action. The app, super easy to use, a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. So basically anything you can think of, FanDuel Sportsbook has got it. On the college side, just a couple of numbers maybe some of you are interested in. Pac-12 championship game. Oh, it's going to be a good one. Oregon by 9.5 right now. Favored over Washington. Texas over Oklahoma State by 13.5 as it begins. Georgia 5.5 over Alabama. And you're saying there's a chance? Okay, probably not. Michigan by 22.5 over Iowa. So, and then the final Power 5, Florida State 3.5 over Louisville. So some of the numbers from FanDuel Sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season. End the NFL season in style. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL.
That 9.5 for Oregon, that seems really, really rich for a team that just beat you. I don't know. I don't set odds. I'm not a bookie. That just seems odd. So, okay. We've talked about Seth Littrell. We've talked about, how it affects Oklahoma's recruiting and all that. I just feel like they're going to be okay. It's, I've had people out there talking about how, okay, the jury's still out on Brent Venables. We don't know if they'll make the right hire. And I think back to Oklahoma's history basically since 98. And I cannot think of a bad offensive coordinator hire for this team. I mean, Kevin Wilson was good. Kevin Sumlin was good. Josh Heupel was good. Josh Heupel's issue wasn't that he wasn't a good coordinator. It's just, he kind of got dealt a bad hand at quarterback. I mean, Trevor Knight didn't end up being what they needed at quarterback. Blake Bell wasn't either. And so you had this period between Landry Jones and Baker Mayfield where quarterback play was not great at Oklahoma. And Josh Heupel he was kind of the scapegoat for that, unfortunately. But I think every other hire since then, before then, and even Heupel himself, they've all been really good. Oklahoma's just had a really good offense for the better part of 25 years.
It's a good case study for all of us, again, that this is why it's important that it's not just Brent Venables or Jeff Lebby recruiting offensive playmakers or, insert offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, right? This is why when we talked about a lot of these skill guys, who was it at wide receiver that made this strong push and turned this 24 class into something special? And, oh, by the way, has heated up in 25. It's Emmett Jones, right? Who has been a big piece of that for Oklahoma. So assuming that is staying in place for Oklahoma, and it sounds like it is, I don't know why it wouldn't, then you should feel good that the recruiting class is going to stay in place. Joe John Finley, do we feel strong that Joe John Finley's staying at Oklahoma?
I don't know. I don't feel real strong one way or the other about it. I think it wouldn't surprise me to see him follow Lebby to Starkville, but it also wouldn't surprise me to see him stay. He seems like a guy that's very content with his role at Oklahoma. And obviously he got a lot of great experience as kind of the signal caller for the offensive coordinator this year. And I could see him maybe even getting a bit of a bump and earning a pass game coordinator credential or something, co-offensive coordinator credential, even if they went with Seth Littrell, because he was a big part of the offensive play calling. Will he be the offensive coordinator? I think they want to go with somebody that's got more experience than that. And I think that's reasonable given that you're going into the SEC. You've got this great group of quarterbacks either at Oklahoma with Jackson Arnold or coming with Michael Hawkins and Brendan Zerberg and Kevin Sperry. I mean, it's a great group that you're going to have. You don't really want to experiment, I guess is the best way to put that, with an unseasoned play caller. So I'd kind of lean more Seth Littrell. You kind of have mentioned the guy from Kansas at times. I think Colorado's, Sean Lewis. I know, Colorado's had a down year and he ended up getting replaced as the play caller, but what they were able to do.
Colorado has not had a down year. They've had a slow finish to the season.
Yes.
It was a great season for Colorado. Don't let the end of the year confuse you with what happened to Colorado a year ago, but continue, carry on.
Thank you. That's a very salient point. What I was going to say was that, he was doing a lot of really, really good things offensively with basically no offensive line. And to me, that's pretty impressive. What the offensive production that they've been able to have while Shadur Sanders is basically fighting for his life back there. A credit to Shadur, but also a credit to, getting the ball out quick to Dylan Edwards in space and, finding ways to get their playmakers the football. That's one area that you think, okay, maybe Jeff Lebby could improve on, is really identifying playmakers and finding a way to get them the football. Sean Lewis, he's got that capability. I've seen people talk about Grubb up in Washington. I just don't know necessarily why he'd want to jump from Washington to Oklahoma unless you're just throwing the bag at him. I don't know.
Yeah. SEC, but obviously you've got the, Big Ten thing for Washington. So that's exciting. It's not like they're all of a sudden on the outside looking in of what essentially is going to be a power 2 situation going forward between the Big Ten and SEC. But man, Oklahoma's tough to turn down if they make a phone call to you and tell you, look at all these different, it's Oklahoma, man. And that's Washington. And that's no disrespect to where Washington is at. They've had a magical season. But let's just play the history card for a little bit, and I can make some reasons why, yes, you would say I'm coming on down to Norman, Oklahoma, if given the right price tag and opportunity. So, but I would agree. I mean, I do think that's a long shot. They've got something cooking up there. But hey, you strike while the iron's hot and come to a place like Oklahoma, and then all of a sudden it goes great, and then boom, yeah, no doubt you're a head coach. So.
Yeah, you've even seen some names like Cliff Kingsbury thrown out there. I don't think they touched that one. I think the Cliff Kingsbury experiment would be more attention maybe than what they would want, although they did hire Jeff Lebby, so I don't know. And then you've heard names like Drew Brady thrown around. I feel like it's going to be a tight circle of names that Oklahoma pursues, and it seems like it's Seth Littrell. And, if you're going to bet, put your money on Seth Littrell versus the field.
Yeah, it does, right? It feels like it has that momentum early on, but we'll see. Let's let these next couple of days take shape. I wouldn't imagine this is, I don't think this is going to be a snap your fingers and announce your next offensive coordinator situation. I mean, obviously, now that you're not playing in the Big 12 championship game, that allows this move for Jeff Lebby to happen at this particular moment in time. But it also gives you time to say, I mean, if you wanted, you install somebody as the offensive coordinator for the bowl game, you almost trial run the thing, and then you can figure it out after that. So I don't think you have to race to the finish line here if you're OU.
Yeah, and given that the 2024 recruiting class seems to be pretty well stuck together and committed to Oklahoma, at least as far as we can tell and know, yeah, you might not need to hurry to make a decision there. If there were guys that you were still trying to recruit and trying to flip at skill positions on offense, then you might want to make a quick decision and really hit the ground running. But it doesn't seem like Oklahoma's got a lot of offensive guys that they're still heavily pursuing that would want to know kind of what's going to be the scheme, how they're going to utilize my skill set. So we'll see. Man, just finally, how dumb was that Oklahoma State BYU game? Just so dumb. Just all of it was, it was kind of the perfect culmination to Oklahoma's time in the Big 12, where Oklahoma State, gives everybody hope and then snatches that hope away late in the game. And then BYU gives Oklahoma hope again. And then, yeah, just a dumb way to end the season. You only have yourself to blame. You can't put it on anybody else, but still it made for a fun Saturday afternoon. At least
it was fun until it ended for Oklahoma viewers. But it was a BYU team that I thought went brain dead offensively in the second half, and yet did inspire hope, as you mentioned, in that first overtime. To me, they lost the game, though, by you gamble, and then suddenly you have 4th and 1 late and you punt. I couldn't figure that. That was such a bad decision, I thought, from Sataki. It's how are you going to coach and call fakes and everything's going to work, and then you got a chance on a final drive to try and ice the clock away, and you punt it away to Oklahoma State. I just didn't get that piece of it. But, hey, it is what it is. It's frustrating. It's not going to be a fun Big 12 championship game, obviously, for Oklahoma fans trying to choose between a rock and a hard place with Texas and Oklahoma State. But Oklahoma's made its own bad, right, by, the failures of an outgoing offensive coordinator in the Kansas game. And obviously just a couple of mistakes in the Oklahoma State game. Had a chance to be there, didn't get it done. We move forward.
That's right. A lot to learn from this season. Oklahoma finishes 10-2, and now we await bowl destination. We'll get you prepared for bowl season. We'll talk transfer portal, recruiting, all of it, more offensive coordinator discussion as the days go by. Subscribe to Locked On Sooners wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Be here Monday night, 9 p.m. Central Time for our weekly live show. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. But until next time, he's Josh. I'm John. Boomer Sooner.